Hey everybody, welcome back to my car shop. Today we're going to do an overview on the Forsyth Duster project and talk about the things we're going to go through to preserve this vintage race car. Let's watch the show intro and I'll see you in 30 seconds. I'm Mike and this is my car's shop.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is my car's shop.
Now that wasn't so bad, was it? You got an opportunity to see just a little overview of some of the projects that we're working on here in the shop. And of course, we've added this project to the list that's not in the intro, but it is in the outro of the show. So I thought we would spend a little time today just talking about exactly what we're going to do to preserve this car and put this car back together again so that it can be streetable. We're obviously not going to drag race it, but there's a lot we're going to do to try to preserve the patina on this car, do minimal work, not a restoration, and get this car so we can be enjoying it. Even though the car only has 9,000 miles on it, it has had some repaint on it. There's some Bondo in the door. It obviously had some damage. It was not driven on the road from 1971 on. It was just drag strip and home. One of the very cool things about this car is the patina that's in the paint and what we're going to be able to do to preserve that. I'm not really going to get into that, but I just wanted to state the fact that the intention with this is to try to preserve as much of this as possible. You know, we'll do things like adding the B back here into the Bad Axe radiator. Bad Axe is a town near here. The car was sponsored by them. We will go ahead and replace these patches, and there's been a lot of flack on the channel about the amount of rust in the car, but you need to understand a couple of things about this car. First of all, if you've ever been to the racetrack, and especially back in the day, there's just a lot of crap that comes up off of the track onto these cars that holds moisture, and it's very common for these cars to rot out in the wheel well over time. The other thing is this car was not always stored inside during its life, and so where we live here in Michigan, it's very, very wet. This car was not driven on the track every year. There was years that, from what we understand, it was setting because it was broken or needed some work. And so here in Michigan, it's very muddy and very wet. And then after the car was broken and no longer used, it literally sat out on the wet ground since the early 80s and just has deteriorated to the point. And that's not an uncommon thing around here. So even though the mileage is low and we can pretty well document that, we know why the car is rusted the way it is. Most of the bones on the car are in good shape. The frame rails are good. I did find one spot on the rear frame rail, I think it was on the passenger side, as I've looked at this so far, that we're going to need to do a little work on the frame. But our real intention with this is to try to preserve as much as possible. We'll take out some patches in here and where we need to, and blend this rather than repainting, so that these patches here will not be completely hidden, but yet by the same token they will be blended in so that it looks like the car would have maybe, say, in 1979. It's interesting to note that though this door looks darker than the rest of the car, if you rub it a little bit, the color does blend out. So this in here is just really, really faded out, and for some reason this didn't. So hopefully we'll be able to get that to where it looks like it should. Well, as a matter of fact, you can see I just changed the color right there just by spitting and rubbing. And I think it does the same thing here. I had done this the other day, and that color between the door and the quarter is pretty good. So when we go through and do the patina treatment, this door should match pretty good. I'm uncertain at this point if we're going to do something to fix this cracking Bondo in the door or not. I got a feeling there's a dent there. We probably need to peel that out. So what I just said may be a moot point anyway, and we'll end up having to do some body work here. I really apologize for the wind. I hope it's not getting on the microphone too bad. The hood is rusted right in here, and I want to show you that. Some of the inner structure is going to need some work. We have a couple of other hoods for the car. but I really think I want to use this one again because I want to try to preserve all of this patina and keep this car as unrestored as possible to bring back its vintage drag racing heritage. Another thing you'll notice is here on Auto Parts, the city of Bad Axe, where Bad Axe Radiator is in Huron County, and here on Auto Parts sponsored this car. We will go ahead and find these letters and put that back on here as much as possible. Also, we're looking at trying to find vintage pictures of the car so that we can see what the stickers were that were here, so we can replicate those stickers once we're done, put those back on here so that the car looks more like it did when Bob was drag racing it. I live in a part of the country here where the wind never stops, and if you were to see around us, if you've watched some of the videos when I'm on the road, you'll see windmills everywhere. So I apologize again if there's wind on the microphone, but got to get you out here so you can see. As we mentioned, this hood structure down in here, and I'll bring you around, needs to be done, and we'll fix that. That's an easy fix. Just a day's work or so to go in there and cut out that rusty part and fix that. I have a couple of other hoods. We may go ahead and cut a piece out of another hood to put in there, but I really feel it's important to preserve this hood and not replace it. So you can see that down in here it's rotted. And again, this isn't because this car has seen tons of salt and everything else. It's because it's been sitting in wet ground. We're surrounded by farmland here. There's a lot of clay in the ground. And without being put in a very dry situation, it doesn't take long for a car in this area to deteriorate. We are in the rust belt, but the rust here is not just salt. It's also just moisture on the ground. If you'd seen the first video we did on this car when I was looking at it, we had done some under hood shots. Battery trays rotted, no big deal. The inner fender wells and everything here are good. My idea, and I want to run this by the family, particularly Dave, my idea is to go ahead and really make this engine base sparkle, and so that the car is unrestored on the outside and preserved, but when you open the hood, we have a sparkly engine and a sparkly engine bay that just grabs your eyes and wows you. That won't take too long, but we do have some metal work to do. It's rotted out in here. The inner structure, so we'll need to get into that and see how bad that is and what we need to do. This is one of the worst spots in the car as far as I'm concerned. It's the same thing over on the other side, not quite as bad, but if you're familiar with dusters, they usually rot out on the frame right down in there, and then this inner structure in here rots out so that the car sags over on this side and there's no frame left. And this frame rail's solid from everything I can see, so we'll get into it, of course, get it in the shop, pull the front suspension out, get the K-frame out from underneath it, and see what we're dealing with. Between what we're doing on the Challenger and this car, I'm really hoping to be able to get a rotisserie yet this year, so I can get these cars on a rotisserie, get them spun up on their side, so I can really look at what they're like underneath. So you know, if you're looking for something to do to help support the channel, I'd like a rotisserie. We got a hole in the fender over here. We'll probably patch that. My idea is surface rust. We'll lightly scuff, maybe do a little rust treatment on it, but for the most part, the patina preserve treatment that we do will quelch that rust for the most part. But if it's a hole, we're gonna go ahead and patch it if we can. The worst part of the car is the floor pan and the torsion bar cross member. So we know that we need to replace that or rebuild that torsion bar cross member. And we're also talking about just buying this inner pan and putting this piece in as well. One of the things that I was thinking about when it comes to doing this car is to do something different than we've done on Stitches and not fabricate everything on the car, but show you what it's like to install panels that you purchase, what has to be done. We've not really covered that other than quarter panels. We've not really covered that on the channel, and I think the cross member is a couple $100. I think this big floor pan piece here is $400 maybe. So I think that's a good way to go. It'll showcase some other skills, teach you some other things about how to do this stuff, and it's good from here back, so different than Stitches where it's all shot. This is the floor pan over there. Yeah, it's okay, but overall I think the 4-speed hump is still decent, but this torsion bar cross member that you can't see is really bad. But the frame rail itself, from what I can see, and I've got to get under there with the frame checker, whack, whack, and see what that's like. But so far, it looks like it's good. So even if there is some stuff there, we'll probably just section some pieces in if we need to, or patch stuff up that way. I don't want to get into replacing frame rails if we don't have to. But that's where we're at. The dashboard, we've got several dashboards for this car, so that's no big deal. But all the deterioration is, contrary to what some have said, is not because the car has 109,000 miles on it. It's just because it's been sitting around for 35 or 40 years on wet ground and just been rode hard and put away wet. So that's what happens, and it's not really that big a deal to go ahead and get this stuff fixed up. So if you look at the trunk pan here, the trunk pan is good. I wish that the Challenger was this good, but bottom down in here, this is questionable. We may put a piece in, we may just patch it where it's thin up in here, not sure yet. There's a technique you can do in things like this that you can actually lay some fiberglass in and strengthen this and seal it up. We may do that. Up around the wheel wells is decent. Of course, we got to get all of that factory seam sealer stuff out of there and see what it's really like. But overall, quite the opposite of stitches. This is pretty solid back here. So it's showing, you know, that the car was, as rusty as it is, it's still in decent shape. So I'm going to qualify that here in just a minute. You saw that, so I just wanted to come back and say, up around the wheel wells up in here, I know it's really hard with the sunshine the way it is. There's not much I can do about that, but both sides is about the same. So you can see we got some rot up in here. Hopefully you can see that. Get you brighter. Yeah, we got some rot up in here. Again, because we're trying to preserve the patina of the trunk paint, I'll probably patch this and run a piece all along there. Now, that's not a huge deal to fix, and that way we can preserve this deck lid as much as possible. I remember this car myself all the way back probably till 1990-ish, in that area. I remember seeing the car where it was parked at that time, and at that point this car was not anywhere near that rusted. It was very solid. I know that when it was parked in the early 80s, the interior was in it, the dash was in great shape, the seats were in great shape, none of the floor pans were rotted. So we know where the damage happened on the car, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just wanted to emphasize that again, that personally myself, I saw this car, what it was like in the early 90s, and it was in nowhere this state of deterioration. So it's just been the fact that we all do it. I've got some behind the barn. Cars sit around here and they go. But the beautiful thing, the exciting thing is it's all fixable. We can put this car back together again, and I am so honored and excited to be able to be taking part in this and taking my skills and applying it to this piece of history and putting it all back together again. The beautiful thing about this car is none of that work is really a lot of work to do. We've commented on how solid this car is, and some people kind of have mocked that and said we don't know what solid is. Of course it's not solid for a car that's in Texas. It's not solid for a car that's in Arizona. But for a Michigan car that's been parked in the wet ground as long as this has, the bones are actually pretty good. It's in much better shape than the Challenger. So I don't see anything that's going to be huge structural work or that's going to take a long time. And when we say a car is solid around My Car's shop, remember, we're looking at stuff that other people would probably pass up and not repair. So there's a context to everything, and I want to make sure that you understand that. Of course, I know this isn't a rust-free Southern car. When we're talking about solid, we're saying the frame rails are pretty well intact, the body's not falling off of it, it needs some patchwork, it needs some floors, but for the most part, the structure of this car is pretty solid. So as a case in point, and we've not talked much about it, but let me swing you around just a second here. So as a case in point, we've got a 74 Dart Swinger right there that if I can find it, I'm going to insert a picture here about what that car looked like when we trailered it home. That car only had 35,000 miles on it when I got it. And some people question that, but I know it did because all of the stars were still on the brake drums. It still has the original brake shoes in it, other than a couple of spring kits because they just rotted from sitting. That car is fairly well untouched mechanically. However, the body was shot. The front fenders had huge holes in the tops, and the bottoms were rotted off. Miraculously, the doors were actually pretty good. The quarter panels were just gone off the car, and so you've seen pictures probably of the series when we hung the quarter panel on the car. But that's the kind of damage that happens to even a low mileage car. That car is only now about 50,000 miles because my son drove it when he was in high school. But that car is a low mileage Michigan car that was parked. The woman bought it brand new in 1974. We think by 1977, she was no longer driving it. It had 35,000 miles on it, and she passed away, and the car was parked in the weeds on the wet ground. It sat there for years behind a barn. Then a friend of mine bought, or a guy I know, he's not a friend, but a guy that I know bought it, brought it home for his wife. It sat in his wet ground for years. They never did anything with it, and I was able to pick the car up for $350 back in 2008 maybe, somewhere in that era, and we've had it ever since. 2006-ish probably. Brad, you can drop comments down there and clarify, or Joe, you guys remember better than I do when we got it. We've had it a long time. Still on the original engine, like I said, but that's what Michigan ground does. Fortunately, that car was rust-proofed, and so the frame rails and most of the important parts in that car are still solid. It was just the sheet metal on the car that fell off because of sitting on wet ground. And that's very, very common here in Michigan. So again, I consider that to be a solid car. Even the floors really aren't that rotted out because of the Z-Bart. There's a little work to do on the floor pans, but for the most part, if we bolted that sheet metal on there, that car could be driving. It just needs a brake line. So, more planning to come on the Duster. There's more things we want to think about and do. Of course, we're going to have to start ordering some parts. I plan to physically be working on that car this fall. That's really my goal, but I wanted to get it home here and be able to do exactly what we just did today. Start looking at the car, making plans, checking out, seeing what it needs, start making parts lists, start looking for deals on parts, trying to find, maybe we can find a floor pan out of another car so we don't have to purchase the new. We definitely need to do that torsion bar cross member, so we'll be looking for one of those. If not, we'll either fabricate one, which I'm leaning towards, or we will just go ahead and purchase that one for a couple $100. So yeah, I think that's gonna do the first step of plans for the Forsyth Duster. So let's talk just a little bit about what's coming here in the shop. Today, I just am burned out on the Challenger. I'm just burned out on flopping around on the floor, and I just didn't feel like working on that, and I thought it's a good opportunity to do an overview because the weather's nice and the wind is not blowing too bad. I've been waiting for a day like this to talk about that car. We got some more coming on the 47 Ford soon. It's either going to go get the wiring put in, or my darling wife and I were talking last night, and she's willing to work with me to put that wire harness in. So we may just keep that one here and go ahead and do that on a day like today, when we can pull the car outside, work on it, lay the harnesses out in here on the floor, and take you through the process of installing that American wire harness that goes in that car. So that we're leaning towards that. I've got some traveling to do here soon. I got a house in northern Michigan I have to go do some work on. I'll be gone for a while. So we'll see what things look like when I get back, if we have time to be able to accomplish that. Also, I talked to the guy on the Oakland today, Wayne, and he got called out of town and was not able to ship us the oil pan. So that should be, hopefully, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, in the mail today. We'll have that in a few days. So hopefully within a couple of weeks after I get back, we will have the oil pan on that car and be able to get that put together. I'm going to be doing an episode on that yet this week, moving forward, because we're ready to stain some of the wheels and mount the tires. So look forward to that. One thing that has to happen today is I have to commit a neatness in here. It's time to push back the walls again. When Mark gets back, I've got some plans on doing some shop improvements that I'm hoping he'll be able to give me a hand on. I know he's excited to get back out here to the shop as well once he gets back off of his job assignment. I want to do more on the GTS, and something that's coming real soon you're going to want to really check out. We're going to be doing the first start for the season on the 69 Charger. We need to get that car out, get it running, get the fluid circulating, move it around a little bit, give it a bath, get it covered back up again, wash the car cover, stuff like that. So that episode hopefully be coming in the next couple weeks as well. There's a lot going on. I've really started some new stuff that's been coming out on Tuesdays that are shorter episodes. They're tech tips and tool tips and stuff like that. So some really cool stuff that's already in the can and ready to be launched on Tuesdays coming forward. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, why not? You've watched this far. Most people don't. Usually we get to this point in the video when people are gone. But this is when the good stuff is that gives you the idea of what's coming and what you can watch for. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell for notifications so you're notified about when the next video comes out. If you haven't met us over on Facebook, go over there, /MyCarShop on Facebook. Pinned to the top of the page over there is a thread called Show Us Your Junk. You guys are doing a great job of posting stuff that you're working on. I love seeing the progress. We got one guy doing some unibody frame rail work. We got a couple guys actually doing unibody frame rail work. We got another guy who's doing some truck frames and a whole bunch of other sheet metal work and really cool stuff. So let's go over there and get that discussion going and keep that discussion going. Also, we are on Instagram, /MyCarShop. It's a good way also to keep up on the news of what's happening around here. Once again, thank you to Super Clean for sponsoring the channel, for reaching out to us and putting your product where our mouth is and letting us be a spokesperson on your behalf and using your products here in the shop. I know some of you guys have been picking it up and using it. Rob, I hope you got your stuff and are using it on your Oakland. You're probably not settled in yet, but hopefully that package arrived to you. Thanks for being the winner of our drawing. And I think that'll do it. So wait. You were going to click away, weren't you? I know you were. Don't do that. Click up here and click that all episodes and watch everything on the channel. When we hit our 1,000, probably the first 60, 70 episodes on this channel are going to disappear into the members only area, and we're going to keep stuff forward from the branding logo. So if you want to see that stuff without being in the member area, go check it out, because it's not going to be here forever. Once we hit that 1,000, that's going to become part of the member area. And there's a lot of really cool stuff coming. I can't wait to get there. We're almost halfway there. No, Bon Jovi's saying we're halfway there. Yeah, anyway, that'll do it for today's episode. So as always, watch more stuff on the channel, tell your friends, share this in groups, let's spread the word, let's keep the channel growing. It's to your benefit if we do, and rah!